What's up, Broncos country? Mile High Mario here with a very fun episode of Altitude Adjustment. Why? Because I will be flying solo. Like the proverbial cheese, tonight I stand alone. And before I get started, usually I like to have a fun cold open, something to really get the show going that captures your attention that maybe four people see. But I'm going to bypass all of that tonight. And I'm going to talk about something very simple before we hit this intro. As you can see, the title of this episode has to do with the Broncos being frauds, right? Because we've heard that this past week, the week before, really since like week 5. We've kind of been hearing about the Broncos being frauds. And we know what happened last year. And then, all these national syndicates and all these experts, they're picking the Broncos as their dark horse team, as their darlings to potentially make the playoffs. And they got off to a 1-2 start and it looked a little shaky. And then all of a sudden, everybody started abandoning ship. And now that they've turned it around and won 9 games in a row, we have gone from Cinderella story, from the dark horse darlings to frauds. And what I realized about the concept of people calling the Denver Broncos frauds, do you know what kind of fans are calling the Broncos frauds? The kind of fans whose teams are not 10 and fucking 2. That's right. Broncos aren't frauds. They are legit contenders. In fact, they should be the Super Bowl champion favorites. My name's Mile High Mario. This is Altitude Adjustment. Welcome to the show.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a sticker.
So yeah, the title of this episode is "Are the Denver Broncos Frauds?" And I admit it. It's a little bit of an attention grabber. It's a shameless thing that I have done. Because I'm sure that people will hate comment and come in here and be like, what do you mean they're frauds? Of course they're not frauds. Or you get it from the other end, again, from fans of teams that are not 10 and 2. Say, well, of course they're frauds. Yeah, of course they're frauds. They're absolutely frauds. Andy pointed out. Good clickbait, Mr. Mario. Yeah, I'm not usually the clickbaity type. But because it's just me tonight, I figured I'd step out of my comfort zone and get a little clickbaity. So here's the thing. Like I was saying, obviously not frauds. And here's the example that everybody's going to give. Several years ago, the Pittsburgh Steelers started something like 10 and 2. And all along, people knew that they were not a good team, and they ended up flaming out in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think they were the number 1 seed. I think they ended up being like the 3 or 4. If you're in the comments, I clearly don't do research before the shows. I don't even do a blueprint. I kind of just like turn the computer on, hit the show, go live, and just talk and just do my best. So if somebody wants to research that, go for it. But that's the team that they are compared to. And it's funny because if you want to do mental gymnastics and prove to yourself that the Denver Broncos are frauds, then you can, right? Like you could do enough mental gymnastics to convince yourself of anything. I mean, if I wanted to dedicate this entire show to convincing you all that I could fart a rainbow and ride it to a pot of gold, I could do the kind of mental gymnastics it would take to convince about 53% of the people watching that I could indeed do something like that. So if you really want to bend the truth and find exceptions to the rule, then go right ahead. You want to say, well, the Broncos are frauds because that one time that the Steelers were good and everybody knew they were bad, they ended up being bad, even though they made the playoffs and they were over 500, and I'm pretty sure they won their division. So I guess the definition of bad is really subjective, right? Like if we're setting the bar at you have to win the Super Bowl, and if the Broncos don't win the Super Bowl, then they're frauds, then yeah, those are the kind of mental gymnastics I'm talking about where you could rationalize it as, hey, They didn't win the Super Bowl. See? They were frauds all along. Didn't matter that they were the number 1 or number 2 seed. Didn't matter that they beat both of the teams that were in the Super Bowl the year before. Doesn't matter that they beat the number 1 defense. Doesn't matter that they beat the number 1 offense. None of that matters. Didn't matter that they win, at this point, 9 games in a row. Because here's the thing, they didn't win the Super Bowl. See, bro, I told you that they were frauds, and you know that that's going to happen. You know that there are going to be people out there who make that justification if or when the Broncos do not ultimately win the Super Bowl. So that's the answer to the question. Because here's the thing, like when it comes down to brass tacks, it's really simple. The Broncos are 10 and freaking 2. 10 and 2. They have won 9 straight games. Let me take you guys all back to week 3. Okay? We'll go back to week 1. Week 1, you start the season against Tennessee. That's a scheduled win. Game was a little bit closer on the scoreboard than the actual game felt. The offense took a little bit of a time to get going. The defense was fantastic. Cam Ward seemed like the real deal, but that was not a good measuring stick game. And then the following week, you had the Indianapolis Colts, who we all assumed would be an easy win. And again, if it wasn't for some egregious leveraging penalty and a rare missed Will Lutz field goal and a rare bad game from the defense, they win that game. But they didn't. If ifs and buts were coconuts, then however the rest of that saying goes. They didn't win that game. Do you guys remember the meltdown that Broncos country had after losing to Daniel Jones and the Colts in week 2? Myself included. I did a post-game show with Mike Carmelini, and I think Strez was there, and David. And, maybe it was just David. I have done so much of this crap, I can't remember who I do it with. No, I believe it was David Talks Broncos, and I were doing the post-game show, and I was legitimately trying to rationalize feeling good about it. And I was in a dark place week 2 of the season. Because as I looked at the schedule, I'm like, man, they got a lot of tough games. Like at the time, Burrow wasn't hurt, so Cincinnati looked like a tough game. They had Philadelphia coming up. Dallas was down the pike, Kansas City. And I'm like, these were the kind of games that you had to win. And then they turn around the following week. They have the lead for pretty much the entire game. They lose on a last-second field goal once again to the Chargers, who did not need to rely on a leverage penalty. And all of a sudden, the dark horse darlings of the NFL are 1 and 2. And that's when people really started to abandon ship. Because for the first 3 weeks, Bo didn't look as good as everybody wanted him to. The defense had a chance to stop Indianapolis and stop Los Angeles on the last drives of the game. And again, you could make the case that they did stop Indy when it counted, but it didn't matter. But they definitely didn't stop the Chargers when it mattered. And so there we were in week 3, 1 and 2. And we're all starting to panic a little bit, right? Because when you're in a division with Kansas City and you're in a division with the Chargers, who don't typically charger until the postseason, you can't get behind the 8 ball early. And after everybody, all these national syndicate people started to abandon ship, that's when the Broncos decided, you know what? Yeah, let's just go win some football games. 9 in a row. That doesn't happen by accident, okay? Fraudulent teams do not win 9 games in a row. It is entirely too difficult to win games in the NFL on a week-to-week basis, okay? It is damn near impossible to win 9 straight games if you're not a really good team. You are not just going to fall into 9 wins, okay? And I think the reason that people want to make this case, right? I'm going to do a little bit of mental gymnastics here. I'm going to try to get inside the mind of the haters. And it's polluted and it's gross, but here I am. The reason that people want to convince themselves that the Broncos are frauds, aside from the fact that all these people had Bo Nix pegged as a round 2 quarterback, and he is up to 20 wins in his first 2 seasons in the NFL, which I think is tied for 6th all time. He also has 5 games left. And if he wins all 5 of those games, he will set the record for most wins ever by a quarterback in his first 2 seasons. But I digress. It's because people like that had Bo Nix pegged as a second round pick. And then he had a really good rookie season. And people are like, nah, well, check down artist. He's a product of Sean Payton. And then this year, and I think we can all agree, compared to our lofty standards, Bo Nix has underperformed. He has. And it's okay. And I think Bo would agree with that too. He's awesome at not taking sacks. And I think that really keeps the offense above board a lot of the time. But he's thrown a lot of dumb picks. And those are the kind of things that you want to see improvement from between year 1 and 2, but certainly between year 2 and 3. So I think going into next season, and when next season is upon us, I think that's when we really need to start getting critical of some of these bad interceptions. Because really, he let the Commanders back into the game with the bad interception. And if you look at his body of work that game, he had a lot of drops. I feel like he had 4, 5, 6 drops from his receivers that night. The body of work for that whole game was fantastic. So he just needs to tighten up. Sorry, but I digress because I'm supposed to be getting inside the mind of the haters. So aside from the Bo Nix argument that people just want him to fail so that they can be proven right, bitchy little people like Benjamin Solak, who waited literally a year and a half to drop some bullshit article about why Bo Nix isn't good. He had to wait that long into the season for Bo Nix to have a noticeably bad game against the Raiders on Thursday night. And he took full advantage. So when Andy had pointed out that I started the show with good clickbait, it was okay clickbait, Andy. But what Benjamin Solak did, that shit was next level clickbait. It was rage bait. And honestly, it was low-key brilliant, if not a bitchy thing to do, because all the people that want to be convinced and verified that Bo Nix isn't that good, they can glob on to some garbage like that and be like, see, I told you Bo Nix isn't very good. But then on the other side, the smaller percentage of the population, the Bo Nix supporters, a.k.a. pretty much just Broncos fans, they were out for blood. And he knew that was going to happen. And regardless of how you feel, because Bo is so polarizing, people are going to click. And so, yeah, I might have taken a page out of Solak's playbook and asking if the Broncos were frauds. But if you're here, you know the answer to that question. You like, if you've watched any of my shit from the last season and a half, you know for a fact that I am a full Bo Nix supporter. And I was never one of those people that was off the Bo Nix train after his one bad game week 1 of his first season, of his rookie season. I wasn't off the train after, throwing 1 touchdown in the first 4 games. And I'm sure all of you are the same as well. Trig, I'm a Bo-liever. Exactly, Trig. I feel like everybody here is a Bo-liever. So we have to cover all of our bases. Now, getting back to the point of what I was saying, aside from the Bo Nix stuff, and see, I brought up Benjamin Solak and it upset me because it was such a bitchy thing for him to do, but we're back, okay? The other thing that you can make a justification for, and I'm not saying that I agree with it, I'm saying if we're following the flawed logic of these people, this is what it is. The Broncos aren't winning correctly. That's it. The Broncos are not winning correctly. They're not beating the bad teams by enough points. Oh, well, the Commanders, they have Marcus Mariota, Marcus Mariota, as Chris Collinsworth decided to start calling him after, a decade in the league. Yeah, they took him overtime in a fantastic play by Nick Bonito on a 2-point conversion in overtime to win that game. Still a win. Oh, well, they played the Jets, who were terrible, and they hadn't forced a turnover in this long, and they Justin Fields is awful, and that defense is man. Still won. Still goes down as a W. And a recurring thing of what I'm talking about, and I'm going to keep bringing this up every week. Thank you, Mike. You're the best too. Love this. Love you. Love everything about it. I'm going to keep bringing this up. If I may quote Dom Toretto, from any, maybe 90s babies that grew up with the version of Fast and the Furious where they didn't go to fucking space and jump their cars off of like from building to building, and then like someone has superpowers or something, and John Cena is brothers with Dom Toretto or something, and then someone came back to life. Before all of that, when they were boosting VCRs, those are the things that they were stealing. Then the TVs with the built-in VCR, those are the big money items. That is the Fast and the Furious that I'm talking about. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning. And if I may extend beyond that, people are not going to remember how you win. Like maybe as a whole, when this season comes to a close, we'll look back and be like, man, Broncos won a lot of close games. But you know what that's better than? Man, Broncos sure did lose a lot of games, a lot of close games, because that's what we said last year. That was exactly what we said last year. And if we look at the trajectory of Sean Payton since joining the Denver Broncos, he has done exactly what he's needed to do. First year, the Russell Wilson year, I think they were a 7-8 win team, something like that. They flirted with the playoffs, but I don't think any of us really thought, like even if they had snuck into the playoffs that year, which was a long shot, I don't think any of us gave them a real shot. And of course they didn't sneak into the playoffs because they weren't a good enough team. Because Sean Payton had to kind of like put his stamp, his footprint on this team. So first year is a wash, okay? Not only are you dealing with Russell Wilson, the player / Russell Wilson, the enigmatic personality, you're dealing with the Russell Wilson contract. Second year, you want to see growth. The second year is like when you're winning some games, okay? Maybe you exceed some expectations, which they did, but you're losing those close games. Barely, like you're in them, but you're barely losing. And then the third year, the year that we are experiencing right now, you take another step, you're on that upward trajectory, and you are now winning those close games. Barely, but still winning it. So according to this trend, next year they're just going to blow everybody out and be 17-0, right? Because that's what conventional wisdom tells us. And you heard it here first, just in case it does happen. Circling back to the issue at hand. People want to say that the Denver Broncos are frauds because they're not winning correctly. And do you know what kind of people say that? Losers. Losers think that it matters how you win. Losers think that it matters how you lose. Winners know that the only thing that matters, the only thing that's important is winning. And listen, I had to learn this lesson myself because on this very show about a month ago, when they had time after time after time needed a big defensive stop at the end of the game or a big time drive from Bo Nix, they had to come back in the fourth quarter. I kept saying, well, it's not sustainable. Why? Because conventional wisdom tells us it's not sustainable. Well, you're not going to be able to beat the Chiefs when you're losing in the fourth quarter and you need to make a fourth quarter comeback. They did that. Okay. Oh, well, you're not going to be able to, put together a game-winning drive against the Houston Texans in Houston. That's the best defense in the NFL. They're even better than the Broncos defense. They did that. Oh, well, you're not going to be able to mount a fourth quarter comeback against the defending world champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, who have arguably the best roster in the entire NFL. Like you're not going to be able to win that game when it's an early start on the East Coast and they've got London on the mind. They did that too. They're doing all of these things that I did not think that they would do. And so I went from steady trepidation of how I felt about this season to now, see this? I'm completely all in, and I've been all in all month. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It's December. The month hasn't been on that long. Since November, I've been completely all in because they continue to prove me wrong. Because I've watched so much football over my life, and I've never seen a team have this sustained success week in and week out. And we want to keep saying they can't keep winning this way. They can't keep, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. That's why people think that they're frauds. They just haven't put two and two together yet. But the problem is they've been disillusioned into what winning is supposed to look like. You know what winning is supposed to look like, Broncos country? It's supposed to look like your team having more points than the other team when the score or when the clock says 0. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. And I've said this a couple of times and I'm going to reiterate it. If the Denver Broncos, let's say, go to a Super Bowl, and they are one of the favorites right now. And to be perfectly honest, there's not a team in the AFC that scares me, even though the Patriots are making a good case. And then never thought that I'd see this. Let's say that they make it to the Super Bowl. Hell, let's say they make it to the AFC Championship game, and they're one win away from the Super Bowl. Do you really think that people are going to look back upon this season and be like, yeah, they're in the AFC Championship game, but they barely beat the Jets. Like, the Jets? They should have lost to the Jets. Yeah, they're in the AFC Championship game, but God, it took them overtime against the Jaden Daniels-less Commanders and a botched not a botched two-point conversion, but a freak play by Nick Bonito on a two-point conversion just to beat the Commanders. What? No, nobody is going to think that. You know what they're going to think? Shit, Broncos found a way to win a lot of games. And they found a lot of different ways to win a lot of different games. And I think that's what excites me the most about this team. Do I wish that I didn't damn near stroke out every single time this team plays a football game? Yeah. Like, in my 20s is when I experienced the Tim Tebow year. And, like, it was exciting, and I was all about it. And, you know, like the older fans, like my current self, couldn't handle it. I'm like, what do you mean? This is awesome. Now that I'm the ripe old age of 37, and I need to be more concerned about heart health because that's just going to be my life now where like heart health is a thing and taking care of it. Would I appreciate it if the Denver Broncos didn't make me want to stroke out every single time they played? Yeah. But, you know, by the next day, I'm usually fine. And I'm sure all of you are too. Like, I was really stressed against the Commanders towards the end of the game, as I'm sure all of you were, because it's a game that they shouldn't lose. No, they didn't. It's a game that they shouldn't lose, and they did not lose. It doesn't matter how they won. It doesn't matter that they went to overtime. It doesn't matter that they should have lost because the Commanders drew up an excellent play. And I think it was McNichols was wide open. It doesn't matter. Only one thing matters. Time in, time out. The only thing that matters is winning. And I'm sure that this has been brought up, but I'm just going to rehash it, okay? And I want to rehash this point because so many of the people that I see on Twitter who want to try and convince themselves and convince others that the Broncos are frauds are the Kansas City Chiefs fans, which is hysterical to me. Because we beat them, despite the officials' best efforts. They barely beat the Colts. They just lost to the Cowboys. They're 6-6, 12 games into the season, and they don't know how to cope. Now, granted, most of their fans have really only been fans for about 7-8 years. Maybe actually closer to like 6 or 7. I think it was like 7 years is when Mahomes was like the official, like took over as the official starter. That's really when like their fans started becoming fans. It's ironic that those are the people that want to convince you and I and all of us and anybody that'll listen that the Broncos are frauds because of how they're winning. Not that they're winning. And honestly, I love being called a fraud. Do you know why? Because if they were a 6-6 team, like the Chiefs, no one's calling them a fraud. They're just calling them a mid-ass team. The only teams that do well enough can be called frauds. And I'm sorry, like, in the NFL, it just doesn't happen. You don't accidentally win 9 games, okay? What's ironic to me about all these Chiefs fans saying this is that this is exactly how they won damn near every single one of their games last year and went to the Super Bowl. You talk to any Chiefs fan. My in-laws are Chiefs fans. And I tolerate it. They're mostly good people. Okay. Um they they had no problem with how they won last year. And you ask any Chiefs fan and they'll tell you, "Well, this year's Chiefs team is much better than last year's Chiefs team." Um no, they're not, because this time last year when we were 12 games into the season, Chiefs had one loss. Actually, they might have been undefeated. I don't know. They had 0 or 1 losses. I know they finished with 2, and the last loss was to us because they had their JV squad out there. Okay. Um, so it's like, no, last year's team was much better because they were 1 loss at this point in the season. And the reason that they think that is because of how they were winning. They weren't winning right. These Chiefs fans, were used to the Tyreek Hill days and the early days of Patrick Mahomes before he became a check down artist, when he's completing 50, 60, 70-yard passes. When he makes ill-advised throws and either gets bailed out or, just threw it far enough for Tyreek Hill. That offense used to put up a lot of points every single week. That's how they got used to winning, because they won a lot of games big. Then last season, I think almost every single one of their wins, or the vast majority of their wins, were one possession games. And the vast majority of their wins, they needed a defensive stop at the last second, or they needed Patrick Mahomes to take him down the field and get him into field goal range to score a touchdown at the last second. You see where I'm getting at? Does that sound a little bit familiar? Of course it does. That's exactly how the Denver Broncos have been winning games all year. All year. And maybe the craziest thing about all of this, about being called fraudulent, is you look at the 2 losses that the Broncos had against the Colts, who have proven that they are a playoff team. They might go on to win their division. They are a playoff team. So it's like, you have no shame in losing that game, a game that you should have won, a game that you lost on a last-second field goal. There's no shame in that on the road. And then you lost to the Chargers before they lost their left tackle, before they lost I guess they did lose one of their running backs in that game, but before they lost their stud rookie running back, before their offensive line imploded. You don't feel bad about losing that game. Like, yeah, it sucked and it was shitty to lose to a division opponent in a game that you should have won, but there ain't no shame in that. Sometimes you lose to good teams. Sometimes you lose to bad teams. Just ask the Rams who they just lost to and how their plural? Do St. Louis people still root for the Rams, or is there some animosity? I digress. Ask their people. They call it the people. Ask the Rams people how they felt about losing to the Panthers. The Panthers are a good team. Rams, for my money, are the best team in the NFL and shouldn't have lost to them. What if the Broncos had lost to the Panthers? Or had almost lost to the Panthers, like how they almost lost to the Commanders? You think everybody would be real level-headed about that? Yeah. No, absolutely not. And I just saw power rankings. I don't know who, like, these are all so subjective and stupid anyway, but I saw power rankings that still had the Rams as the number 1 team in the NFL. And you know what? I agree with it. Do you know why? Because I don't overreact over, like, 1 loss in a game that maybe you should have won, or 1 almost loss in a game that you won but almost didn't win. We don't need to be so reactionary. Sometimes you could just call a spade a spade. And so if we're really trying to, again, rationalize why people would think the Denver Broncos are frauds, if you look at their body of work, it doesn't make any sense, because they are getting production from everywhere. They are winning games in a lot of different ways. Okay? They are winning these close games, these one possession games, where they need to hold on at the end. Saw it against the Raiders Thursday Night Football. Terribly boring, hideous game. I had the unfortunate pleasure of watching it live. That was my birthday gift to me. Yeah, this is 37. Yay. At least they won. They had the massive comeback against the Giants. They had, probably arguably another massive comeback against the Eagles. Obviously, point differential was different, but that was a huge comeback. They held on late in the game against the Jets, and I think they were actually down partially in that game. They blew out the Cowboys. They came down, from behind and then tied, and then went on to beat the Chiefs. Same with the Texans. And so the point that I'm trying to make is they've won because of the defense. There have been games where their defense has carried them. There's been games where the defense has won it for them. There have been games where you said, defense, we need to stop, go out there and get it done. Not every game. Didn't do it against the Colts. Didn't do it against the Chargers. Didn't do it against the Commanders. Oddly bad game from the defense. That stepped up exactly at the point when they needed to. But that game was won because of the offense, the Commanders game. But how many games has the offense had to win? Well, they had to, come back and win the game against the Giants, against the Eagles. The defense also contributed to that. Bo Nix was exactly as good as he needed to be when they beat the Texans, when they beat the Chiefs, when they beat the Commanders. And at the end of the day, like, isn't that what you want? I would much rather have a quarterback that balls out in the fourth quarter and in overtime, apparently, that balls out when the game is on the line, than a guy who starts real hot and then fizzles in the second half or in the fourth quarter. I think that a lot of the opinions about Bo Nix, and maybe you share some of these, are skewed because the AFC is just entrenched in quarterback hell. Okay. And I know this is like a weird year, but stick with me on this. You have in division Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, who might be two of the best five quarterbacks in the NFL. Certainly both top 10. Okay. Joe Burrow's been hurt, but when Joe Burrow is healthy, in my opinion, he is the best quarterback in the NFL. You have a Lamar Jackson in your conference. You have a Drake May, who is going to be an MVP candidate now that, Bo will be compared to for the entirety of their careers because they were in the same draft class. You have a Josh Allen, MVP. Had chokes in the playoffs, but very good quarterback. You have a CJ Stroud who had a really good rookie year and is kind of fizzled, but seems like he's a very good quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, who, I think he's kind of been a victim of circumstance. I know Trevor Lawrence gets a lot of hate. I have like an irrational love for Trevor Lawrence, but we don't need to talk about that. The bottom line is the AFC is an absolute gauntlet of really, really good quarterbacks. And I think that's the standard that people are holding Bo Nix to. Fairly or unfairly, doesn't matter. They don't seem to care that he's in his second year, that he's basically played 1.5 seasons exactly with the Denver Broncos. He's being compared to, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who got to sit out really his entire rookie year. He had a phenomenal teacher in Alex Smith. It wouldn't surprise me if Alex Smith became a coach. Like, he's absolutely brilliant, and Patrick Mahomes has contributed or has given him a lot of credit for his success. Stepped into the Andy Reid offense. And that's another thing. You know what? Now that I'm talking about this, let's talk about this, Broncos country. There are so many people who will not give Bo Nix his flowers because they say that he is a product of Sean Payton. Yeah. Okay, I'll grant you that. It's like, okay, well, what if Nathaniel the man, they really should have taken Mahomes. Yeah, in theory, they should have taken Mahomes. But if Mahomes had gone to that version of the Chicago Bears, he wouldn't be the Mahomes that we know today. If Mitchell Trubisky had gone to the Chiefs and said, like, if you had pulled the old switcheroo, Mitchell Trubisky might still be the Chiefs quarterback, or maybe would have like just recently burnt out. And honestly, Pat, and it all depends on where you go. You become a a product of the team and subsequently the coach that you go to. So if we are going to say that Bo Nix is a product of Sean Payton, then you damn sure better put your big boy panties on and say, well, Patrick Mahomes largely is a product of Andy Reid. I mean, is there really anybody in the world that doesn't think that Andy Reid is a top 3 coach in the NFL right now? Is there anybody that doesn't think that Andy Reid is a top 10 coach all time in the NFL? And we don't think that Patrick Mahomes is benefiting from that. And again, I know that it's so ridiculous to compare the two, but it's just, I've started talking and it's on my mind about these comparisons. And I guess I'm making this comparison because that's who people want to compare Bo Nix to. And it's like, well, if he's not Patrick Mahomes, then they think that he's not any good. And the thing is, I say that, oh, well, Bo Nix is he's a screen merchant. He's a check down artist. Patrick Mahomes checks down and throws more screens, or not more screens, but checks down more than Bo Nix did last year. And I think it's pretty close this year. So if you want to draw these comparisons, and again, like the bottom line is the reason that people don't think that Bo Nix is that good is because these are the comparisons. But when you really look deep into what you see on film, what you see in the box score, what the advanced analytics stuff tells us, they're not that far off. They're not that far off. Micah Cole, welcome. Nope, Broncos aren't frauds. You're right. I've spent the last 37 minutes arguing that exact thing, but thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. Also, if you're in the text line, usually I'm kind of able to do a show with Pat or with whoever it is, and then check the chat line. I'm trying to be locked in here. I'll be able to star those and come back to them sooner. And yes, Paul, I know Paul Shatter. It's a very unfortunate last name. Sorry, Paul. I know it's glitching. I have no idea why. If you're familiar with me, you know I know nothing about technology. I'm not the IT guy. I have full bars on my Wi-Fi, so I guess just stick with me. If we're having technical difficulties, it is absolutely Zach Seeger's fault. All right, let's circle back to it. As I was saying, the reason I think, well, okay. Yeah, Paul, I know it's Schaefer. I know, man. I'm messing with you. I'm just saying your name it says it right there. I have it pulled up on the screen. It says Shatter. Okay. Which means that you are a person who shats. Um, just saying. I know that it's Schaefer, but anyway. Keep distracting me, Paul. I'm trying to do a solo podcast here. Okay, and I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I don't even know what I was saying or what I was talking about. Okay. Let's bring it back. Oh my God, what is happening? I have no idea what's going on. Well, that was weird. Yeah, somebody just joined Z. Yeah, that was absolutely Zach Seeger. He's trying to sabotage me, doing my first ever solo pod for altitude adjustment. And yeah, Zach can't just leave me alone. Thanks, Zach, for all of that. It's just literally getting back on track. And then, Zach derails my entire show. He's my frenemy. It's okay. It's fine. Anyway, I'm going to get off this topic because we could rant and rave about it forever. The bottom line is Bo Nix is really good. Is he a top 10 quarterback? No, but he also doesn't need to be. Don't look at Drake May and think, God, I wish we had that. I don't know. Because then you could look at JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix or even Jaden Daniels this year, because availability is ability, and he hasn't of scouting. That is part of the whole big picture. Bo Nix didn't miss games in college, really? Jaden Daniels did. So what I'm saying is, don't look at Drake May, who might win the MVP this year, and be like, well, he's not Drake May. That's okay. He doesn't need to be Drake May. Don't look at Josh Allen, who a couple weeks ago had 6 total touchdowns, and be like, Bo Nix isn't scoring 6 total touchdowns. What? Bo Nix has won 10 games this year. Bo Nix won 10 games last year. I'm no math guy. That's 20 wins in his first 2 seasons. Still 5 games left in his second season. Paul wants to know, do you think May or Bo will have better stats after 2 years? So if we're going from like starting in year 3, like if I had to say, I would say Drake May. And I think it's because his team and that's okay. Like maybe someday Bo Nix can break into the top 5. But to get into that echelon of like best quarterback in the league, from what I've seen from Bo, as it stands right now, he doesn't have that. Okay. In terms of not taking sacks, yeah, best in the league. Fantastic. In terms of, you know, 2-minute drills or getting the ball into scoring position when you absolutely need, one of the best in the league. Absolutely. But we're talking about being a complete player. Bo Nix is great, but do I think that he could be like Joe Burrow? Do I think that he could be like Josh Allen? No. And that's okay. Do I think that Drake May could be like Joe Burrow or Josh Allen? Yeah, based on what I've seen. Because one of the things that we as Bronco fans want to kind of like do in order to defend Bo Nix is talk about all of the drops or like his lack of weapons. And you can make that case. It was like that was when Bo Nix turned it on. Right? It's like we couldn't have both of those things. And I think it was Joey at in the Let's Talk Broncos network who had pointed this out. He's like, I could not have 1 week, 1 game where like Dobbins and Bo Nix were both clicking. Now they had a couple games where they were both clicking, but I think he meant more like down the stretch that we couldn't have nice things at the same time. And that's how it felt. But if you want to talk about Bo Nix's targets, you don't get to like say, well, Drake May has really good weapons. No, he doesn't. Kayshon Boutte, who's fine, but he was like a 4th or 5th round pick. He's kind of turned him into a stud. Stephon Diggs, who we all thought was washed, he kind of resurrected Diggs' career. And like, don't tell me that he didn't, because Diggs just left Josh Allen in the Buffalo Bills and then CJ Stroud in the Houston Texans. So it's not like he was coming from bad quarterback situations. And it took Drake May. Hunter Henry's been solid, but Drake May has made him. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two right now. Drake May is making his targets. Bo Nix isn't there yet. Now, he has instances where it looks like that, but he's just not that guy yet. And you know who did that? You know who famously did that? Who took a no-name player that would have not been successful on any of the other 31 teams? Tom Brady. That's the standard. That's the guy that you look at of like, he made those scrubs into studs. Specifically Deion Branch. I remember when Deion Branch started with the Patriots, he was an absolute stud. And then he left to go to Seattle. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, like, Seattle's got a really, really, really damn good team. He did nothing there. And then he went back to New England and he was good again. That is the kind of quarterback. But when he's playing with you He's a freaking Pro Bowler. So yeah, long story short, that's why as of now I'm taking Drake May over Bo Nix. But here's the thing, like that's not a knock on Bo. Like Drake May's really freaking good. Bo Nix is also really good. They're just very different quarterbacks. Now, who would I rather have personally? I'd rather have Bo Nix because I love Bo Nix because I love that what he's been able to do. If you're in the comments, can you let me know? Zach was telling me that the stream might be frozen. So if you are still watching, like hit me up down here and let's see what's going on. Otherwise, I guess I'm just gonna keep ranting and rambling. You know what? Actually, let's put a bow on this. Okay, let's put a bow on Bo. Okay, if you have been experiencing, okay, it's frozen. Well, I guess you guys can still hear me, so I guess I'll just talk and we'll close. The technical difficulties again. It's Zach Seeger's fault. I don't know why he has it out for me. None of the other shows on the channel have any problems. Just altitude adjustment, but it's okay. Yeah, appreciate the chat telling me thank you again. Sorry. The only thing I know how to do is like literally click a button. So if it's not working, I do apologize. But again, thank you all for sticking around and like still wanting to listen. And I can see I can see the chat. And if you guys want to interact in the chat, please feel free to do so. But yeah, let's wrap this up, and I'll let y'all get on with your night. Um, the Broncos are a very real, very very real contender. And isn't it crazy that if you had said that, like going into the season, like during preseason, and you're saying the Broncos can contend for a Super Bowl, this is a Super Bowl team. It almost felt disingenuous, right? Like it almost felt like you were drinking the orange Kool-Aid and you could do enough mental gymnastics to, make the case that the Broncos can be good. And now here we sit, 10-2. And when you're saying like the Broncos are a very real Super Bowl contender and are going to be a really, really difficult out, it's 100% true. And you're not drinking orange Kool-Aid at all. And here's the thing, I think it's difficult for people to wrap their heads around because of how bad the Broncos have been in the last 10 years. And if you were wondering like why the Patriots aren't getting that same treatment again, it's like it's how they're winning. And yeah, their strength of schedule hasn't been good, and they lost to the Raiders. Like, let's not forget that. I don't care that it was week 1; y'all still lost to them. I know their strength of schedule hasn't been good, but remember the theme of what we're talking about is like it doesn't matter. You play who is in front of you, and you are supposed to beat them. That's what the Patriots have done. That's what the Broncos have done. It's the cream of the crop in the AFC right now, right? It's Patriots and Broncos, and then shockingly, there is a bit of a drop off. And then you're talking about, your Ravens, your Bills, your Jaguars. And that maybe there's a 6-6 team, but they're barely in the hunt, so we're not even going to really talk about them. And yet, Jim, and you bring up a good point. Like, no, we haven't played our best. You're right. I don't think that the Broncos have played their best. I would say, like, arguably the most complete game that they played was against the Dallas Cowboys. And I think if the Broncos can play that brand of football, like that kind of football, no one will beat them. Where Bo Nix is clicking, the run game is clicking, the defense is clicking, the special teams looks good. If you're getting all three phases, and I've said this so many times, but if you can get three phases out of the Denver Broncos for 3 quarters, doesn't even need to be like. Okay. It feels so seldom that we get 4 dominant quarters of football that I would take 3. Okay. That's fine. And Trig says, yeah, Ravens, give me flashbacks. Unfortunately, was that the blowout? I was too. I was at that game in Baltimore where Bo Nix caught the touchdown pass, and when that happened and the game was still close, I'm like, "Oh, look out. Oh, look out. It might get a little bit spicy." And it did get spicy, just went in the total opposite direction. But you know what? I'm glad that you brought that up, Trig, because this, and we'll kind of end with this. This is proof of the remarkable growth that the Denver Broncos have had. Last season, my biggest gripe with them was that they did not have a signature win. The Broncos did not have a single win out of their 10 wins last season where when they played the game, they won a game that they should not have won. Their best win was against Buccaneers, really pillar to post. Bo had a really good third career game. They ran the ball well. He threw the ball well. Defense was unbelievable. That was their signature win. And as far as signature wins go, it's a little bit weak. And when I was looking at the schedule this year, one of the things that I had said was like, if they win 10 games again, it wouldn't be that bad. People would think that you're kind of standing still and record-wise you would be. But this has been a much more difficult schedule. Now, granted, a lot of things have changed. I don't think anybody thought that we'd be playing the Commanders without Jaden Daniels. I don't think anybody thought that we would be playing the Bengals without Joe Burrow. But again, like you can't control that. You control who you play against. But the biggest difference between this year and last year, like the biggest strides that we have seen, is they have a lot of signature wins. Beating Philadelphia in Philadelphia, coming back in the fourth. A really good freaking football team, and you come back in the fourth quarter and beat them and then hang on defense, complete game, signature win. Beating the Cowboys the way that they did, Cowboys are starting to trend in the right direction. I know they get a lot of grief, and rightfully so, because Jerry Jones is an idiot and he's kind of obnoxious and everything. And, that team is obnoxious and whatever. But Cowboys are a good football team. Chiefs couldn't beat them. That's a signature win. Going into Houston and beating Houston, I don't care that CJ Stroud got hurt. Because if y'all remember, we were talking about it earlier in the show when the Broncos were kind of close to making the playoffs in Sean Payton's first year with Russell Wilson. That was the biggest game of the season. They had to go into Houston and beat them, and they lost. They won it this time. Houston had the best defense in the league. That's a signature win. That has been the biggest difference. And then, yeah, Trig brought up the blowout. They got blown out by Baltimore. It's the biggest difference for this team. There is not a single team in the NFL where I'm like, I just don't see how we beat them. I don't. And that's exactly how I felt last year. It was awesome to get into the playoffs, but going to Buffalo, I was like, I have no idea how. Like, I don't see any feasible way that they could possibly beat this team, and they didn't. They got blown out. And there were several games like that last year where I'm saying, like again, the Baltimore game, I'm like, I have no idea how they win this game. They're overmatched. They're not good enough, and they weren't. This year, I feel different. This year, I feel like if they play good Bronco football, they will be in it with anybody. And really, it's gotten to the point, Bronco fans, where as long as they're in it in the fourth quarter, and then the Giants game where they weren't in it, but they got themselves back in it. But as long as they're in it in the fourth quarter, as long as you give Bo Nix a chance to step up when he needs to, a really good situation because you know that they're going to step up. You know that no moment is too big for Bo. And that's what I will say for him over Drake May. That's the big reason that I would take Bo Nix over Drake May, because we have been shown by Bo that the moment is never too big for him. We don't know if Drake May is that guy yet. He hasn't really been put in those situations. So we don't know. Objectively, we don't. Bo has proven it over and over and over again. How many fourth quarter comebacks does Bo Nix have? I'm not sure of the exact number, but I do know that he is now third in Broncos history in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives. And he is not even finished his second season. And I'll leave you with this. If the Broncos win out, that will be 25 wins for Bo in his first 2 seasons. If that happens, back in their first 2 seasons. As it stands right now, he's got 20. And he is still among some current and future Hall of Famers in that category. That is why the Broncos are not fraudulent. That is why they are a damn good football team. They can beat you any freaking way that they want. And by the way, 10 wins, they have beat you any way that you want. Any way that they want. The Broncos are your daddy. Now take this belt to the ass and go sit in the corner. My name is Mile High Mario. Thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been a fun ride. I know it kind of threw you off, and I'm usually not a fan of the one-man podcast because I don't want it to feel like I'm talking at you. So hopefully you felt like this was like a conversation, even though I literally just talked for. And we will be back in full force next week. My name is Mile High Mario. This has been Altitude Adjustment. Your Denver Broncos are not frauds. They're the best team in the AFC. Go outside and scream it from the mountaintop and make sure all of your neighbors know that the Broncos are legit. I love you. I'll see y'all next week. Goodbye.
Hey, feel I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a sticker.